Okay, we'll call the committee of the whole meeting to order for February 14th at 12:30 p.m. And I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that the committee of the whole adopt the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting on February 14th as amended to include or to be added the Goodman Matwachuk property purchase and an update on the curling rink progress from Riley. So with those two amendments, have the motion, please.
I will give you that motion with those two amendments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. That's for a motion from Councillor Killick-Smith that the committee of the whole adopt the minutes from the January 24th committee of the whole meeting as presented.
I so move, Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Solar panels, Shalane.
I think everybody can see me now. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Chris. I'm here to speak with you about an item with respect to a solar panel structure in town. So there's been a solar panel structure that's been constructed in the industrial district that does not comply with the Town of High River land use bylaw requirements. Consultation with the town began after the construction and began after the construction and when the construction was almost complete. The land use bylaw states that solar energy systems shall only be located on the facade of a roof of a building and should be integrated with the building design and character. The solar panel structure is mounted on the ground as shown in the pictures attached to the report. The goal for the owner is to have this building off the grid. The town plan encourages and supports transitions towards energy systems supplied by sustainable, renewable energy sources to the greatest extent possible. The owner's response to the possible negative impact on public realm was a mitigation plan, which includes installing landscaping to soften the streetscape from the solar structure. The essential question is, should town administration enforce the land use bylaw as is, which would require the owner to install solar panels on the facade or roof of the building, or allow the freestanding solar panels at the site with the proposed mitigation plan? And please note that the owner, Kurt McCormick from River's Edge Welding, is also here to help answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shalane. I'll open it up for council questions too, but why are we not dealing with this through a variance?
Yes, we do have a variance process, and he would go through the variance in the event that we want to support this. The reason why we're bringing this to council is because our land use bylaw states specifically shall in the bylaw with respect to having solar panels on the facade or on the roof. So it is black and white with respect to that. So we wanted to make sure that we were in alignment with what council would want on this one too, to see if there's, you know, if we're open to something like this, of like a solar structure that's on the ground. There are other communities that do it as well, but they do have really strict requirements in place. So in the future, if we wanted to put this in our land use bylaw, it would be some type of amendment. However, our land use bylaw is very much supportive of solar energy structures and other types of renewable energy as well. So yeah. This is why it's being brought to council first, and then if we support it, we would go to a variance.
Okay, so how did this come to us?
We actually had a staff member pass the site and notice that there was a solar structure being constructed, and then it was past planning.
Okay. Hey, Kurt, good to see you.
Hey.
I guess I'm okay with it. I'm curious on the landscaping. We'll get to that in a minute. But the bigger concern that I have is how we get ahead of this so that people know that this stuff is in our land use bylaw and they got to comply and everything else. And I completely understand where some of the frustration on your end would come from, that it's hard, especially through our website, to find information on, a specific
Topic.
build like this, right? So, I can go through our website, and I've already talked to our staff about our search engine. That's always frustrating to me, but you can't just type in solar. So if you can't type in solar and get an answer, like what are people supposed to do? Just start digging through every 500-page document looking for a 3-sentence paragraph in our land use bylaw that has, it's difficult, right? But so that's on another end, is that I want to find a way that we can do a heck of a lot better for people that are looking to do projects, how they find out information before they're half done and then it gets triggered, right? So I don't know, give me your take on the landscaping, Kurt, because I'm not really seeing where you could do landscaping to block these things out that wouldn't defeat the purpose of and putting shadows on the solar panels, right? So I don't know much about it though. So
My proposal was that we would take, I proposed a half a dozen trees, 2-inch caliper trees, because that's what it says in the land use bylaw, halfway between my west fence and the power lines that are going across my grass, and start towards the south corner of that piece of proposed land and plant these 6 trees to eventually have them grow and maybe shade, maybe not shade. Shading would be, at the end of the day type of thing.
Right.
On the crappy times of the year, what we're talking about is November, December, January. It's probably, I don't know, maybe we would prune the trees. Maybe the trees need to be pruned for the power lines anyways. Maybe we can put these leafy trees up and they look nice and everybody's happy.
Okay. Now, because this is in an industrial area, I'm not overly concerned about it. I think it's fair. What Chris and I were talking about before is that we do a look at our land use bylaw as far as industrial areas. Now, if this took place pretty much anywhere else outside of an industrial area, I'd have huge concerns about it. But
Of course you would.
yeah. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'll help you out a little bit here. Looking at the diagram, it looks to me like you want to run some trees in a north-south direction. And so you're not going to block off what you've built there already, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think projects like this are great for High River. And I think that I don't have any problem with it. I am looking at the back too, though. You're building 2 more to the back, 20 panels alongside the building, it looks like, and then 20 more panels further to the east. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm proposing that at this time for your review, because I think that I don't plan on doing it today or tomorrow, but I think that it would be like a graduated step down the road at some point, hopefully before November came along, as a supplemental measure for those days where I was explaining to you that November, December, January, we run into the shortest, crappiest days of the year.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Nychuk.
Sorry, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my concern is less with the solar panels. Mr. McCormick, I like where you're going with this. I can appreciate that it's a cost efficiency for your business. It adds to sustainability and all the green initiatives that we're all trying to undertake. I applaud that. That's great. My questions come more through administration, how a development starts to take place because an individual or a business couldn't find the right pathway. And clearly, we don't want people just willy-nilly building stuff in town wherever they feel like it, however they feel like it. So that's the part of this process that I want to clean up. And I don't think it's so much about amending the bylaw. I think the bylaw being strict and us having variances is a great thing with this, because this is an ever-changing industry, ever-changing. So if we start to put details in today, in a month, 6 months, 1 year, they could be the wrong things to have in the bylaw. So if we have this thing, quote unquote, handcuffed a little bit, the current council or councils of the future, can look at these things as a one-off basis and make decisions that way. And then having better access to the information for individuals that want to do these types of things is the prudent part here for me. So, thanks.
Good points, Michael. So what do you need, Shalane?
Well, it seems like we got a good feeling about letting this move ahead, which is really good news. That's where we were hoping to go with this. And it's certainly outlined, and Kurt's been awesome to work with, and he's outlined that it was really hard to find this information through our land use bylaw, and it shouldn't be that way. We need to fix it so it's really easy to search and he can have easy access to the information. So I will be working with Clit on that. Michael brought up good points too, so I will definitely work with Clit and get that information fixed.
Okay, sounds good. Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. In the proposal, or in this too, it says something about emails or letters from surrounding businesses, but I didn't see any in there. My concern, like, and you did say that surrounding businesses were okay with it. I would want to make sure that that is in fact true, but also if he's going to put more in the future, that we don't just let that happen without asking those people who also are around there.
Yeah, and Kurt might want to add a little bit more to this too. Kurt spoke to the businesses directly around him, including, I think it's the brewery, right? Kurt, correct me if I'm wrong. And there's a couple of businesses in there wanting to do the same thing in a few years. So they were definitely showing support for it because they wanted to also know the process for putting solar panels on their businesses as well. So yeah, Kurt did provide confirmation from the businesses in that area, and I believe a couple residences that are to the west of the site as well.
So does that mean, Shalane, that my attachment didn't come through in the email, or what did we lose in translation here?
Yeah, no, I'll just have to double check the attachment so they got the mitigation plan with the real property report that you found that had all the landscaping on it. I'll just have to double check to see if the names are listed on there.
Okay.
They should have been, but if not,
all of the letters should be there with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I saw that, so I'll just have to double check.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Killick-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to further to Councillor Nychuk's point. If we're looking at adding variances for these bylaws, is there a way to streamline that process by way of bringing it to the attention of the administration so that this process isn't quite as potentially arduous or complex as it has proven to be in this case? Like, is there a form or a document or something that we can attach to it when people are looking for it, or make it more streamlined when they're looking for that information or needing to start the process?
Shalane, I can add some information.
Okay.
I think there's two steps to that. One, there's the public education piece, making sure the information is readily available. Right now, our land use bylaw in each land use zone has just one line about solar power and how it should be attached to the facades. I think a total of 15 words. But adding that into a brochure that's easily trackable, provide some more information on some of the other issues that come up with solar panels, you know, the shading, because we are one of the sunniest regions in all of Canada. So solar power is going to be something that needs to have a serious consideration across the board. So that's one aspect of things. The other piece is amending our bylaw as well, to take a look in certain areas where it does not have to necessarily be on the facade or an existing roof structure. Because what ends up happening with existing roof structures, they're never designed for the capacity to hold the solar panels. Much like our Bob Snodgrass Recreation Complex, the structure is just not there, and the cost to upgrade that structure is cost prohibitive for the savings that you would get from solar panels. So we need to be innovative and creative and look at options to accommodate that. You know, lots of communities in the States now use parking stalls as a way to generate solar power. They cover their parking stalls and have solar panels over top of them. And so those types of things are innovative ways to address the issues with structures on facades or existing buildings. So I think there's some work we have to do on those requirements, especially within the industrial park and the commercial core areas. Residential is a little bit different of a beast, so to speak, because you don't want a big steel structure on every neighborhood shading everybody's backyard and their gardens. Right? They all conflict with everything else. So I think there's two aspects there, Councillor Kelly-Smith.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you. And even kind of what Chris said, I mean, they're not the most beautiful structures and they're huge. So we have to be concerned if every industrial business there wanted to put up a big wall of solar panels. That's not going to look great. So we do have to think about that too.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations, because if more and more businesses do want to consider that, they're going to be competing for the same sunlight, and their spaces are going to shadow each other. So there's got to be some careful planning for the future as it relates to the sites, especially where existing developments taking place, and different thoughts. Now, technology on solar panels is changing daily, like Councillor Nychuk said. There's new shingles coming out. There's new roof structures that are lightweight, that are film-based solar panels instead of these hard solar panels that need a steel frame. But here we also have wind loading that has to be taken into consideration, because we do have high winds, and those are a risk.
Got what you need, Schlane?
That is all I need. Thank you very much for your time.
Fantastic. And so with this variance, there's going to be a public posting as well, right? That'll
Yeah. Yeah, so there's going to be, yeah, there will be a public appeal period for this one. We actually have one more check to do. Some other solar panels that have gone up, especially in the county, had to get approval from the airport and any organizations they deal with because of glare issues. So we have to run through that first before we go to the variance, and I have talked to Kurt about that already. So we're going to sort through that, and then we'd be going through the variance. Okay. The appeal period.
Sounds good.
I just got one question for council. The mitigative measures along that road, while I think it's good to screen from the roadside, there are some conflicting utilities out there with the hydro lines, and also there's a manhole that's circular on the real property report that may be of concern. So how strong, and understanding how strong council would like to see mitigative measures would be kind of a good indication as well, whether we include that in the package that goes into the posting process or not.
Well, I think anything that you can do to mitigate the streetscape view is good, but you've got a few hurdles to work around there for sure, because you can't move manholes and power lines. So you'll work through that. But I do think it's important that we do what we can for sure. But
okay, so Kurt and I will work on that.
Yeah, it's got to be smart, and it's got to make sense too. So
okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks for coming in,
Mr. Mayor.
No problem. BSRC, Nancy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the recent determination not to proceed with an aquatics expansion, an opportunity exists to review previous studies and further determine the needs and desires of the community. So Parks and Rec has provided a summary of the reports completed over the last several years. And these reports are used to assist in budget development, identify and address critical maintenance, and to plan new uses. A comprehensive study was conducted in 2016 by McElhaney, and it provided Parks and Rec with recommendations for a 20-year master recreation plan. The plan identified opportunities ranging from capital investment to programming and has been used as a long-range guiding document. It also provided the opportunity to benchmark against Canadian standards. At a high level, it demonstrated that High River is in line with its offering for population standards. The McElhaney study was also foundational in the development of the Parks, Trails, and Open Spaces Master Plan approved by Council in August of 2021. This plan is now being operationalized and will continue to do so over the next several years. In addition to the aforementioned studies, building condition reports were also conducted, including dedicated studies on the roof, flooring, ice plant, and pool basin. These studies are used for building maintenance plans and to develop supporting budgets for those plans. With the identification of a maintenance planning cycle, Council determined a building improvement fund to be managed by the BSRC to address ongoing building routine and critical maintenance, in addition to minor improvements, without having to go back to Council for each of those requests. So Parks and Rec has established a process for determining the allocation of these funds. The reports provided are also utilized for capital planning purposes, including projects such as the current leisure slab and curling slab project, and near-term plans for the large arena slab in 2023, and major aquatics maintenance, including filter replacement. In regards to benchmarking on cost recovery versus subsidy, limited information exists. BSRC is steadily subsidized at approximately $3.5 million per year, or approximately 2/3 of the annual operating budget. Whilst we can't confirm how this compares nationally, we are confident in our user fee benchmarking for similar services. BSRC is still recovering from impacts of COVID, but participation numbers are continuing to increase and have done so over the last several years. Additionally, new program offerings continue to be developed to meet public requests. Commencing in March, Parks and Rec will initiate community engagement sessions to more directly address user interests. Additionally, focus and attention has been directed to data collection and analysis. The information will be used to benchmark against similar communities and for us to determine the threshold for social benefit and investment by the town. The provision of the reports is to initiate conversation on the forward direction of BSRC.
Questions? Councillor Killick-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for that overview. I'm curious to know, because like the comprehensive study that was done in 2016 is now 6 years old, right? As far as, so is the engagement thing sort of to take that focus and try and bring us into where we are now and what we think our needs are now? Because granted, 6 years isn't a lot of time, but it's enough time. So where are we at in terms of what are we hoping to achieve with these sessions?
I think with the sessions, we're hoping to get, number one, more real-time information so we can hear from the community what it is that they're looking for. But, you know, the significance of COVID from the time of that study to now, we do anticipate that there's been some change in what the community desires for recreational facilities.
Okay, and especially in light of the fact of at the election and the question that was posed.
Exactly. Sorry, Chris.
Oh, no, go ahead, Nancy.
Okay. Exactly. I think we looked at that as to maybe we heard what the community wasn't looking for right now, but I think what our next step is to determine what they are looking for right now.
Nancy, you mentioned one thing is the $3.5 million subsidy a year that goes on over there. Now, clarify that for me, because previously, we were always told it was somewhere between 800 and $1 million. So where's the extra $2.5 million coming from?
I'm going to have to take that one away. I don't know where the 800 to $1 million comment came from. This was data that I've pulled for this report. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what was presented in the past, but I will come back to you with an answer on that.
Yeah, just don't spend a lot of time on it. Just that number kind of has, I've heard it a couple of times. Chris has mentioned it over the last year and stuff as well, but it's kind of caught me, and I just don't want it. Like, I don't know if maybe you can clarify, Chris, a little bit, like that 3.5 isn't just through COVID, right? Because I know there's significant increases there, but
Yeah.
it's got
it's
to be
not.
real number.
It's consistent. I think it goes back to the utility diversion conversation. Council, the previous council had resolved to get rid of the utility diversion that diverted utility funds into recreation to subsidize it, in essence, in the range between 1.4 and $1.8 million on an annual basis, somewhere in there. And it's a 1 in front of the 1.4, so it's quite a bit of money. And so this shift has now come to, I think it's clear that we subsidize recreation quite a bit, and that's okay, right? It's the conversation we need to have, how much do we subsidize it through taxation and the balance of user fees versus taxation fees. So that's kind of where this new number that you're seeing here, the 3.8 or 3.5, is kind of being generated.
So the utility diversion money was just allocated as revenue.
Correct. That's correct.
And then what actually had to be subsidized through actual taxation was, but both were taxation.
Yes. Well, yes and no, because most of that utility diversion was coming from outside our boundaries.
Right.
So when you take a look at it, and at the end of the day, that's a false economy, correct?
Exactly.
It's a false sense of security when it comes to funding recreation, when we're diverting money from somewhere else that needs the money just as much as recreation does. And we need to be honest with the public and the tax ratepayers within the community about what is the actual cost to deliver the service. And when we talk about the context of building a new facility that's larger and got more amenities, how can a community of 14,000 people afford something like that has a subsidy rate of 66%? When you take a look across this province, the two highest rated cost recovery municipalities in the province right now, I believe, are St. Albert and Cochrane. St. Albert runs at 84% cost recovery, and Cochrane runs at 80% cost recovery. Now, Cochrane's a totally different model than what we have here because it's run by a society, most of their recreation programming. So it's a fundamentally more business-centered cost recovery based upon user fees than it is on taxation. And St. Albert, I haven't really gotten the answer on how St. Albert can get to 84%. On average, if you take a look across country, between 40 and 55% is the cost recovery targets for most recreation systems, with about 45 to 55% of subsidy, depending where you are in recreation. There's not a lot of money makers in recreation unless it's private sector.
Private sector in large centers, right?
That's correct.
That's the problem. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Thank you for the report, Nancy. It's very well done. But one of the things I always have trouble with when I'm looking at these numbers, and I see it included in here, we've included the capital expenses as well. And I think it's important that we look at what is the actual operating and separate that from capital. You'll notice 2018, 2019, 257 and 395 for capital, and then it jumped to 1.3. So it's not as clear as I'd like. I'd rather have something that shows clearly what is the operational cost and what would be considered capital expense. Although they're still attributed to recreation, they're sort of a separate mindset. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for that comment, Jamie. We can take that back, and you can take a look here at our operational expenses. If you take a look at 2017-18, $5.1 million for operational expenses. Our user revenue, not including the grant revenue, our user revenue is 1.3. So, the rest of that is basically tax subsidy that's taking place and covering that cost, that difference. And yes, we get some grant revenue that we throw in from MSI for different projects and different operational components, but it's a big gap between our user fees and what it costs. And I'm not saying that user fees need to recover all that cost. We just got to find the sweet spot, right? Just like golf, you got to find that sweet spot and figure out where's the best. And you know what? The other conversation we should have is, does the community want to see a free recreation component? And whether or not we subsidize the entire thing through taxation instead of user fees, and only charge user fees, for example, on the arena, because that seems to be a more more ability to cost recovery through the arena process than other components. So there's a lot of conversations we have to ask and have to have with council as we deal with the strategic priority on the future direction of recreation facilities, whether we keep existing, whether we start looking for a new site. And I'm going to be honest with council here too. If the direction is to look for a new site, a new facility, you're 10, 12 years away. So you still got to maintain the existing. No matter how fast we think we can move, we can never move that fast. And I think we need to be honest with ourselves. We need about 30 acres for a new recreation complex. And we need to find that 30 acres somewhere within the community and then go from there. And it has to be adequately serviced. The value of Bob Snodgrass is its walking distance. It's close to the schools. It's kind of in the center of our community. And I think we've got to be realistic about, like Nancy mentioned, about what the public really wants and what they really need. There's difference between wants and needs. And I think we need to understand that a little bit better and clearer, because we could get ourselves into financial difficulty if we go after all the wants.
So what are the next steps, Nancy? Just rewind a second here before we finish this off.
I think we'd like to look to council for where they would like us to move forward. We will proceed with our community engagement sessions. We are continuing to build our data so that we can do stronger benchmarking, is really where we're at now. As far as our focus for rate recovery, we are requesting a very minor adjustment to rates for this year, and it was really more to address cash handling. We did not seek a rate increase for this year. We're really focusing on customer service and identifying community needs right now. So I think we want confirmation from council that that's the direction they'd like us to continue to pursue, or if there's a different suggestion in mind.
Okay. No, I think that's a fair path right now. Chris, when are we going to continue this conversation on recreation just within council? Could be in a committee of the whole meeting, but just to, because we still need to kind of rewind from the plebiscite as to how we came up to choosing that option and getting all the council up to speed. And then that would actually make good timing for whatever community engagement data came back to fold that in together so that this council can decide, okay, where are we headed with this? Are we doing the expansion? Are we doing a rec center? Or are we doing nothing?
Yeah. So I think our next steps would be to dust off the original presentation that administration put forward to council as it talked about the expansion. Put those costs together, put what the financial impacts were, although they were ballpark numbers. And it was, a 1,300 square meter expansion to the aquatic facility, all leisure pool, no new tank, all leisure pool components and some renovations to the dressing rooms, those types of things. There was some awkwardness on the dressing rooms because it was talking about unisex dressing rooms, right? So all shared, no men's or women's kind of dressing rooms, just unisex. So we have to walk through those, but we can dust that off and upgrade those numbers. We can bring that at either the next. We got to give Nancy some time to do some of the research work on what everybody wants, but to continue the conversation, we can probably have that updated for the next one, or even we've got quite a bit on the agendas for the next few meetings, so we can squeeze it in on one of the next two.
So how about the next committee of the whole that we we bring that PowerPoint back, and that's all we have to deal with. We don't need to do a nine-hour meeting for this stuff. We can just one piece at a time here because it's a lot of information. Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I just want to rewind something here to what Nancy said. And thank you, Nancy, for your time. I appreciate it. Handling cash, restructuring rates on handling cash. Can I just, is it okay to ask that question here, Mr. Mayor, and get some background on what that means? Because what are we doing with cash?
So we went to rates on the quarter. We had nickels, dimes before, and it was really it was a simplicity thing for deposits. So we went to quarters. Okay, so cash is still very much an acceptable form of tender in our facility. Okay, that's good. I was concerned it was going some weird way, and as far as I know, cash is still pretty legal in our country. So good, thank you.
It's the cashless society, Michael. Dum, 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 dum. The conspiracy is alive in the town of High River Rec Center. Okie dokie. Yeah, all good. Path forward. Well done, Nancy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I know for all the members, the new members of council, there is a lot of information. There's over 550 some odd pages of reports here. And that's a lot to digest. We're not trying to, we don't want to rush you through the conversation, but we want to make sure you have all the information, where we've been, where we got to, and where we need to go to in the future. This three-stage approach. And I think there's a lot of, and honestly too, our benchmarking, like Nancy says, financially is difficult, and it ties back into our conversation about a financial software program. We need to get better at that. So this is going to be a journey talking about recreation over several meetings, and getting comfortable and allow you to formulate questions, and so you can ask those questions as we go through the process. So it wasn't easy to get to this expansion either. If count the existing members of council, we went through, I think it was 4 or 5 different meetings to get to the expansion that we had proposed as part of the referendum. So we'll see where we go. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you very much.
4 or 5 meetings combined with 4 or 5 years to leading up to those meetings. So, okay, thanks very much. Okay, so I added to the agenda Goodman Matruck property purchase. So this is the last remaining piece of property that's downstream on the Highwood within the town of High River boundaries, and Joe Goodman's property that we offered a buyout to, I think, and the last offer was provided to them in 2019 for about $2.8 million to buy out their property, like we did a lot of other places in town. They declined the buyout, and then it was basically taken off the books. Since we had our last council meeting and conversations about our remaining flood money and how much we could possibly move over to Foothills County to help with buyouts downstream in county lands, Joe Goodman got in touch with me and would like an offer brought back for them. Because if they don't get this done within the next year, it's gone forever because of the flood monies. December 31st of 2022 is the end of it. So I said that I told him clearly that the only offer that would be on the table would be the one that was the last offer that was presented to them in 2019. So as far as I understand, Chris, the money is still there and available it's still in that budget. So if council wanted to do this, then we would go back to Joe and start the process over again without any adjustments to the previous agreement. The money's there though, correct, Chris?
That's correct. Yeah, we have the money still for the buyouts. We do have anything over 2 million, we do have to contribute 25% of our own sources of funding to it.
Okay.
That's the conditions of the grant, but we do have the money available to do that.
Good. Councillor Kinghorn?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Maybe I didn't hear you correctly, but are you proposing to go back with exactly the same offer as what we did back in 2019?
Identical.
Thank
This
you.
is not a renegotiate. This is not getting into it at all. There's the deal that was there that you declined before. If you're interested in taking it now, we can move forward with that. So unless there's any opposition, then I just direct Chris to contact Joe and start that again. Councillor Jones?
Thank you. This is going to open up a can of worms for anybody else maybe that declined.
No, there wasn't anybody else that declined.
Okay.
That had an offer like that. So this is the only one that was left on the table that we were interested in doing a buyout with. So
yeah.
Wasn't an open free for all. Anybody that went in High River that wanted a buyout could take one. It was specific pieces of floodway property, right? So
And what do we gain from it?
floodway. Properties that are not protected, right? So that's one of them. So Riley can pipe in here.
I was just going to add, there is actually one other that's similar on the Southwest Dike, but they haven't asked to revisit it or anything like that. So down just past 4 acres on the west side. That'd be the only other one that declined an offer.
Okay. Councillor Barton?
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Mayor. Can you just clarify where this piece of property is for me? Because I don't recall seeing a map or anything.
Just east of, there is no presentation or anything. This just came up over the last week. So east of Eagle View.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get a hold of Joe and see if he wants to proceed. Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Riley, Turling Rink update.
Sure. The tender closed. We had 4 bidders in the range of a little over 1.1 million to a little over 1.5 million. So under what we were expecting. And so we're happy with the bids. We've done initial kind of evaluation and we are following up with some questions to a couple of the bidders. And the intent is this will be on council's agenda for the 28th for award.
Riley, because this is design build, are all the designs basically the same, or are they all over the map with differing designs? And
well, the reason this was a good one for design build was because there actually isn't a lot of flexibility when it comes to the design. It's more about how they build it or how they do the rebar or how they do the piping, and there's some variations in that degree, as well as the accessibility ramp. So we're not expecting huge variation. We don't get into the design until after we've awarded. So what we did was we set out some bare minimum kind of requirements. So for example, the curling was previously this long. It must be that long or longer when you're done. And so that's a requirement they have to meet. How they meet it, they will propose to us later when they get the shop drawings in.
Okay. Councillor Jones?
Thank you. Did this address some of the concerns? I believe it's John at the.
John Steele? Yeah.
Yeah, that he had.
I think, go ahead, Riley.
I believe so. I've talked to John a couple times since then, and he doesn't have any issues that I know of at this point. John's biggest issue was the fact that it was uneven, and so we are addressing that. And so beyond that, there's not much. I mean, he was asking about the curling lounge and the flooring and things like that, but that's outside of our scope at this point.
Sounds good. Thanks, Riley.
No problem.
Wide open question answer period. If there's anybody, put your hand up. Nothing. Meeting in, oh, so close, so close.
So close.
Go ahead.
Mayor. I just wanted to know if we could take a look at a particular bylaw or at some point in time, like how do we, for the benefit of everybody else, if there was something we wanted to bring forward, do you want it through this committee? Do you want it for regular, like how would we, there's a particular bylaw or policy that we might have?
You can open it up right now if you want, but yeah, committee of the whole is usually where we would start something like that.
Okay, so I would like to maybe have a look eventually at our water use bylaw, if we could. Just because I think that it hasn't been looked at in a while, and I think there's some possibilities for maybe fixing a few things, or certainly looking at how it's applied. But not having seen it, it's one of those things where I'd like to see it and then bring it forward.
Okay.
Please.
Put that on the radar, Chris.
Yes.
Okay, maybe touch base with Chris Kelly just on if there's specific concerns, but that we can, and then we'll bring it up in a committee of the whole to get it started.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Now you can call it.
All good. Meeting adjourned, 1:17 p.m. It's 3 o'clock.